Tonight, we are going back to Constantinople. The year is 1453. As you settle into your blankets, imagine the city not as a place of war, but as a vast, ancient machine that has been running for over 1,000 years. The air is cool, moving softly off the Bosporus, carrying the scent of damp stone and ancient incense. We are here to observe the mechanical and biological rhythms of a city facing its final transition. To understand why you wouldn't survive this night, you must first experience the physics of the Theodosian Walls. You are standing on the inner rampart, looking out over a defensive system that is 5 layers deep. This is the most complex kinetic barrier ever conceived by the pre-modern mind. Before you lies the first line of the machine, the moat. It is 20 meters wide and 7 meters deep. It is not a natural feature. It is a mechanical void carved into the earth. You hear the rhythmic lapping of the water against the stone-lined sides. This is the acoustic of the stagnant protection. The moat is rhythmically divided by low brick walls to prevent the water from draining away on the slopes. This is the mathematics of the hydraulic retention. Beyond the moat lies the second layer, the outer parapet. It is a low wall, a biological screen designed to protect the archers who guard the water's edge. Behind that, the outer wall rises 10 meters high. This wall is the shock absorber of the system. It is rhythmically built with 96 square and octagonal towers, each spaced exactly to provide a crossfire geometry. This is the physics of the overlapping fields. You feel the rhythmic steadying of the limestone beneath your boots. The air here is sharp, smelling of wet clay, sea salt, and the oily scent of old Greek fire stored in the tower basements. Finally, you look up at the inner wall, the spine of the city. It is 12 meters high and 5 meters thick. This is the mechanical certainty of Rome. It is composed of a core of crushed brick and lime mortar, faced with carefully squared blocks of limestone. This is the chemistry of the eternal bond. You realize that for 1,000 years, this machine has never failed. It has rhythmically repelled Avars, Persians, Arabs, and Bulgars. The rhythm of the walls is one of stasis and absolute resistance. You feel the rhythmic weight of the empire pressing down into the earth. This is the biology of the imperial gravity. As the sun sets, the acoustic of the city rhythmically shifts. You hear the iron gates of the Charcian and the Golden Gate rhythmically closing. This is the mechanical lockdown of the organism. The bolts slide into the stone sockets with a heavy thud. This is the acoustic of the total enclosure. You realize that surviving involves becoming a component of this great limestone machine. Your modern body would struggle with the rhythmic silence of a city that is isolated from the world. This is the physics of the defensive hermeticism. The biology of the garrison on the walls is one of waiting. You see the Genoese mercenaries and the Byzantine guard rhythmically patrolling the crenellations. This is the chemistry of the vigilance. You feel the rhythmic cold seeping from the stone into your marrow. This is the mechanical thermal exchange. The walls are rhythmically shedding the heat of the day. This is the mathematics of the stone inertia. You understand that the Theodosian machine is not passive. It is rhythmically active, scanning the horizon for the new kinetic force that is gathering in the darkness. The acoustic of the night watch is the final forensic signature of this hour. You hear the rhythmic clink of the mail coats and the soft scuff of leather against granite. This is the acoustic of the human maintenance. You realize that the walls require the biology of the man to function. This is the mechanical symbiosis. Without the eyes on the towers, the walls are just dead earth. With the eyes, they are a biological mechanical superweapon. You grip the cold railing, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the anticipation. And you understand that the Byzantine future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic integrity of the limestone bond. The chemistry of the night air follows the cooling of the earth. As the city rhythmically breathes, the scent of roast meat and wine from the inland markets drifts up to the ramparts. This is the biology of the last comfort. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your heartbeat as you listen to the sound of the city going to sleep. This is the acoustic of the priest dorm calm. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical perfection of the ancient world for the very last time. Tonight, as the air in your room grows still, we turn our attention away from the limestone walls and toward the horizon to the west. The year is still 1453, but we are looking at the mechanical advance of a different machine. Sultan Mehmed II is moving an army of 80,000 men across the rugged terrain of Thrace. To survive this journey, you must experience the physics of the Ottoman logistics. This is not a chaotic swarm. It is a rhythmically managed flow of energy, metal, and grain. You are standing on the Via Egnatia, the ancient Roman road that serves as the primary mechanical artery for the invasion. The sensory transition is one of crushed gravel and the oilless scent of axle grease. The first rhythm of the approach is the physics of the supply chain momentum. An army of this scale requires 500 tons of grain and meat every single day. This is the mathematics of the biological sustenance. You see the wagon trains rhythmically stretching for miles behind the vanguard. Each wagon is a mechanical unit composed of seasoned oak and iron-rimmed wheels. This is the chemistry of the structural stress. You hear the rhythmic creak of the wood and the thud of the oxen hooves against the dry earth. This is the acoustic of the heavy lift. You realize that the Ottoman machine is rhythmically pushing its potential energy toward the Byzantine kinetic barrier. The second rhythm is the biology of the to move the heavy siege engines. The Sultan has deployed thousands of laborers to rhythmically level the hills and bridge the ravines. This is the mechanical modification of the topography. You see the pioneers rhythmically swinging their bronze axes against the Thracian oaks. This is the acoustic of the environmental reshaping. You feel the rhythmic vibration of the earth as the road is compacted beneath the weight of the great guns. This is the physics of the compression. You understand that surviving this march involves becoming a gear in a system that refuses to recognize the natural obstacle. The mechanical reality of the basilic gun transport follows the logistics. The largest cannon, the basilic, is being pulled by 60 oxen and supported by 200 men. This is the physics of the inertia management. The gun is so heavy that it rhythmically sinks into any soil. This is the chemistry of the soil-bearing capacity. You see the wooden rollers rhythmically placed beneath the bronze cylinder to distribute the weight. This is the mathematics of the surface area. You hear the rhythmic shout of the drivers synchronizing the effort. This is the acoustic of the human-mechanical interface. You realize that the gun is not just a weapon. It is a mechanical weight that is rhythmically altering the gravity of the region. The visual rhythm of the camp formation occurs at sunset. The Ottoman army does not sleep in a disordered mass. It rhythmically crystallizes into a geometric grid. This is the physics of the spatial order. You see the tents rhythmically erected in perfect rows. This is the chemistry of the discipline. You feel the rhythmic warmth of the thousands of campfires lighting the horizon. This is the biology of the collective metabolism. The scent of lentil stew and lamb drifts across the plains. This is the acoustic of the digestion. You realize that surviving a day as a soldier involves accepting the rhythmic subjugation of your individuality to the military organism. The boring necessity of the forage calculus follows the march. The Sultan's bureaucrats rhythmically catalog every grain store in the villages along the route. This is the mechanical extraction of the local wealth. You see the ledgers rhythmically filled with incantries of wheat and barley. This is the chemistry of the bureaucratic control. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the clerk's hand. This is the acoustic of the scratching nib. You understand that surviving involves knowing that the army is rhythmically eating the future of the land. This is the physics of the resource depletion. The acoustic of the janissary pulse is the final forensic signature of the approach. You hear the rhythmic beat of the military band. The drums rhythmically synchronize the step of the janissary elite. This is the acoustic of the psychological conditioning. You realize that the Ottoman heartbeat is rhythmically faster than the Byzantine pulse. This is the biology of the aggressive expansion. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the impending collision. This is the physics of the momentum transfer. The chemistry of the night cooling in the Thracian valley follows the day's movement. As the metal of the cannons rhythmically contracts, it produces a series of soft pings. This is the mechanical sound of the thermal inertia. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your breath as you listen to the sound of 80,000 men going to sleep in silence. This is the acoustic of the strategic quiet. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical efficiency of the modern age, preparing to destroy the ancient world. By the end of this hour of logistic exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of inevitable mass. You have seen the Ottoman machine rhythmically consume the distance to the city. You realize that the Byzantine walls are no longer facing a tribe. They are facing a mechanical force multiplier. You grip the cold iron wheel of a supply wagon, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the road dust, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic flow of gunpowder and bread. The acoustic of the distant bell from the west is the final mechanical signal, as the sound rhythmically carries from the first Byzantine outposts. You hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically realizing it is no longer alone. This is the acoustic of the first contact. You realize that you are not looking at a march. You are looking at the mechanical closure of the gap between old and new. Tonight, as the rhythm of your breathing slows, we shift our focus from the dusty roads of Thrace to the cold, dark waters of the Golden Horn. To understand why your survival would be dictated by the sea, you must experience the physics of the maritime barrier. Guarding the entrance to the city's primary harbor is a mechanical marvel, the Great Chain. This is not a mere ornament, but a systemic kinetic inhibitor designed to prevent the Ottoman fleet from entering the vulnerable northern flank of the city. You are standing on a wooden pier at the Tower of Eugenius, where the chain is anchored. The sensory transition is one of wet iron and the briny scent of deep channel silt. The first rhythm of the sea defense is the physics of the tensile strength. The chain is composed of hundreds of forged iron links, each nearly half a meter long. This is the mechanical geometry of the blockade. You see the chain rhythmically rising and falling with the tide. This is the mathematics of the buoyancy and tension. Huge wooden pontoons are rhythmically spaced along the length of the linkage to keep the iron suspended just below the waterline. This is the chemistry of the corrosion resistance meets the physics of the flotation. You hear the rhythmic clank of the metal against the wood as the current pulls at the anchors. This is the acoustic of the constant resistance. You realize that the city is rhythmically protected by an iron horizon. The second rhythm is the biology of the naval vigilance behind the chain. The small Byzantine and Genoese fleet rhythmically bobs in the sheltered water. This is the mechanical readiness of the counterforce. You see the sailors rhythmically checking the rigging and the ballistae. This is the chemistry of the maintenance. You feel the rhythmic rocking of the galley decks. This is the physics of the wave action. You understand that the defense is not just static metal. It is a biological mechanical hybrid that requires the eyes of the lookouts on the tower to coordinate with the force in the water. This is the acoustic of the lapping sea. The mechanical reality of the winch operation follows the chain's presence. In times of emergency, the chain is rhythmically tightened using massive wooden capstans located inside the tower walls. This is the physics of the mechanical advantage. You see dozens of men rhythmically pushing the capstan bars. This is the mathematics of the torque. You hear the rhythmic groan of the oak gears and the squeal of the tensioned iron. This is the acoustic of the structural strain. You realize that the chain is a living machine that responds to the will of the defenders. This is the chemistry of the sweat and grease. You feel the rhythmic snap of the metal as it tightens across the mouth of the horn. The visual rhythm of the blockade pattern occurs in the open sea. Beyond the chain, the Ottoman fleet rhythmically circles the Golden Gate. This is the physics of the naval containment. You see the oars rhythmically splashing in unison. This is the biology of the rower's pulse. You feel the rhythmic distance between the aggressor and the protector. This is the mathematics of the standoff. The scent of pitch and wet hemp drifts across the waves. This is the acoustic of the distant drum from the Ottoman galleys. You realize that surviving a day on the water involves accepting the rhythmic uncertainty of the surface tension. The boring necessity of the port tax follows the maritime blockade. Even under siege, the customs officers rhythmically record the contents of the few ships that break the blockade. This is the mechanical extraction of the commercial data. You see the ledgers rhythmically stamped with official seals. This is the chemistry of the administrative continuity. You feel the rhythmic vibration of the dock as grain sacks are unloaded. This is the acoustic of the scuffing burlap. You understand that the city is rhythmically dying because the maritime metabolism is slowing to a trifle. This is the physics of the economic throttling. The acoustic of the chain bell is the final forensic signature of the sea defense. A small bell is rhythmically tied to the links near the anchor point. If a diver or a boat touches the chain in the darkness, the bell rhythmically signals the breach. This is the acoustic of the sensory extension. You realize that the great chain is the nervous system of the harbor. This is the biology of the early warning. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the cold water pressure. This is the physics of the submerged threat. The chemistry of the brine corrosion follows the long exposure of the metal. As the iron rhythmically oxidizes, it produces a slight metallic temps in the air. This is the mechanical sound of the chemical degradation. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your body as you listen to the sound of the current rushing through the links. This is the acoustic of the silent watch. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical frailty of the ancient naval barrier facing a new age of gunpowder galleys. By the end of this hour of maritime exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of suspended weight. You have seen the great chain rhythmically hold the safety of the harbor. You realize that the Byzantine north is no longer protected by God, but by the mechanical integrity of iron smithing. You grip the cold iron link of the anchor, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the salt crust, and you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast rhythmic tension of the harbor mouth. The acoustic of the midnight fog over the Bosporus is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically muffles the world, you hear the sound of a fleet that is rhythmically waiting for the chain to snap. This is the acoustic of the impending fracture. You realize that you are not looking at a harbor. You are looking at the mechanical limitation of the last Roman port. Tonight, as the silence in your room deepens, we move toward the Ottoman camp to witness the birth of a new mechanical age. To understand why you would not survive the coming weeks, you must experience the physics of the great cannons. This is the moment where the mechanical stasis of the medieval wall meets the chemical kineticism of the gunpowder era. You are standing in the foundry at Adrianople, watching the master founder, Urban, rhythmically supervise the casting of the basilic. The sensory transition is one of white-hot radiance and the sulfuric scent of molten bronze. The first rhythm of the ballistic siege is the physics of the thermal casting. The cannon is not forged, it is poured. You see the blast furnaces rhythmically blown by massive leather bellows. This is the mechanical generation of the extreme heat. You hear the rhythmic wheeze of the air and the roar of the charcoal fire. This is the chemistry of the oxidation. The molten metal is rhythmically directed into a deep clay mold buried in the earth to prevent it from bursting. This is the mathematics of the structural containment. You feel the rhythmic thrum of the liquid metal hitting the mold. This is the acoustic of the liquid weight. You realize that the basilic is a rhythmic concentration of industrial will. The second rhythm is the biology of the gunpowder synthesis. In the shadow of the foundry, laborers rhythmically grind saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. This is the chemistry of the explosive. You see the pestles rhythmically falling into the stone mortar. You feel the rhythmic tickle of the black dust in your lungs. This is the mechanical irritation of the respiratory system. You understand that surviving this process involves managing a volatile potential energy that rhythmically threatens to ignite at the slightest spark. This is the physics of the combustion sensitivity. The mechanical reality of the ballistic loading follows the transport to the front lines. The gun is a breech-loading or muzzle-loading monster that requires a rhythmic sequence of human action. You see the gunners rhythmically ramming the powder bags into the bore. This is the physics of the compression. Then comes the wadding, and finally, the 600-kilogram stone ball. This is the mathematics of the mass volume. You hear the rhythmic scrape of the granite against the bronze rifling. This is the acoustic of the heavy friction. You realize that the gun is a mechanical engine that converts chemical energy into kinetic shattering. The visual rhythm of the firing interval occurs once every 3 hours. The gun cannot fire rhythmically fast because the bronze rhythmically absorbs too much heat. This is the physics of the thermal saturation. After each shot, the gunners must rhythmically soak the barrel in vinegar and oil to cool the metal. This is the chemistry of the heat dissipation. You see the clouds of steam rhythmically rising into the morning air. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your body as you wait for the next impact. This is the mathematics of the ballistic dread. You realize that surviving a day as a defender involves living between the rhythmic gaps of the artillery pulse. The boring necessity of the range calculation follows the first shots. The Ottoman architects rhythmically measure the distance between the battery and the Lycus Valley walls. This is the mechanical calibration of the destruction. You see the plumb lines and a six-sized geometry charts, rhythmically consulted. This is the mathematics of the trajectory. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the engineer's eyes. You understand that the walls are being rhythmically dissected by mathematical logic rather than brute force. This is the physics of the target acquisition. The acoustic of the stone collision is the final forensic signature of the siege opening. When the ball hits the wall, the sound is not a crack, but a deep structural groan. The limestone blocks rhythmically disintegrate into secondary projectiles. This is the physics of the spalling. You realize that the Byzantine fortress is rhythmically losing its integument. This is the biology of the flaying. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the shockwave traveling through the earth. This is the mechanical reality of the seismic act. The chemistry of the sulfur cloud follows the discharge. As the black powder rhythmically reacts, it produces a thick, yellow smoke that blankets the plains. This is the mechanical obstruction of the vision. You feel the rhythmic sting in your eyes. You understand that the siege has rhythmically altered the atmosphere of the region. This is the biology of the industrial warfare. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical obsolescence of the vertical defense facing the horizontal velocity. By the end of this hour of ballistic exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of shattering power. You have seen the basilic rhythmically undo the work of 1,000 years. You realize that the Theodosian walls are no longer impenetrable, but are mechanical targets waiting for the final mathematical solution. You grip the cold bronze rim of the gun, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the heat, and you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast, rhythmic cooling of the siege engines. The acoustic of the distant crumble from the Lycus sector is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically carries through the night, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically breaking into small pieces. You realize that you are not looking at a battle. You are looking at the mechanical deconstruction of the ancient walk concept. Tonight, as the rhythm of the city's heart slows in the darkness, we descend to the harbor level to witness the last defense of the Roman spirit. To understand why your survival would be a matter of chemical terror, you must experience the physics of the Greek fire. This is the unexplained mystery of the Byzantine arsenal, a liquid incendiary that rhythmically defies the laws of nature by burning on the surface of the water. You are standing on the prow of a Byzantine drama, a fast-moving war galley. The sensory transition is one of corrosive heat and the pungent scent of naphtha and quicklime. The first rhythm of the alchemical defense is the physics of the pressure siphon. Greek fire is not thrown in pots. It is projected through a complex mechanical system. You see the bronze tubes, siphons rhythmically aimed from the raised forecastle. This is the mechanical direction of the kinetic energy. Inside the ship's hull, a furnace rhythmically heats the secret fluid, while large leather bellows rhythmically compress the air in a reservoir. This is the mathematics of the pneumatic force. You hear the rhythmic hiss of the pressurized liquid and the thump of the valve levers. You realize that the dramung is a mechanical dragon that rhythmically breathes liquid death. The second rhythm is the biology of the incendiary terror. When the siphon is triggered, the liquid is rhythmically ignited by a flame at the nozzle. This is the chemistry of the ignition point. You see a continuous stream of orange flame rhythmically arcing across the waves. This is the physics of the ballistic trajectory. Because the fluid is petroleum-based, it rhythmically clings to anything it touches: wood, sailcloth, or human skin. This is the chemistry of the adhesion. You understand that surviving a naval engagement involves managing a systemic thermal panic. Water does not extinguish it. It rhythmically feeds the quicklime within the mixture, increasing the intensity of the burn. The mechanical reality of the bronze piston follows the discharge. The siphons are rhythmically operated by specialized alchemists who understand the mathematics of the flow rate. You see the hand pips rhythmically moving to maintain the stream. This is the physics of the continuous pressure. You hear the rhythmic clack-clack of the piston rods. You feel the rhythmic back pressure against the copper pipes. This is the mechanical strain of the containment. You realize that the Greek fire is a mechanical chemical synthesis that requires the precision of a clockmaker and the nerves of a warrior. The visual rhythm of the naval burn occurs during the Ottoman attempt to force the Great Chain. You see the Ottoman galleys rhythmically retreating as the surface of the water becomes a blanket of fire. This is the physics of the thermal barrier. The smoke is thick and black, rhythmically choking the air. This is the mechanical obstruction of the respiratory tract. You feel the rhythmic heat wave radiating from the sea. This is the biology of the You realize that surviving a day on the water involves navigating through a rhythmic maze of liquid lava. This is the acoustic of the sizzling hull. The boring necessity of the recipe's security follows the defense. The Byzantine alchemists rhythmically guard the secret proportions of resin and sulfur. This is the mechanical preservation of the state monopoly. You see the formulae rhythmically transcribed in encrypted code on a 6-sized vellum scraps. This is the mathematics of the cryptography. You feel the rhythmic dread that the secret might fall into the hands of the Sultan. This is the chemistry of the espionage. You understand that the empire is rhythmically sustained by its informational exclusivity as much as its walls. This is the physics of the intellectual defense. The acoustic of the siphon scream is the final forensic signature of the harbor clash. As the liquid rhythmically exits the bronze nozzle at high velocity, it produces a high-pitched whistle. You realize that the sound itself is a weapon, rhythmically eroding the morale of the Ottoman sailors. This is the biology of the auditor shock. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the combustive energy. This is the mechanical reality of the pyrotechnic sovereignty. The chemistry of the oily residue follows the battle. As the fire rhythmically subsides, it leaves a sticky, black tar coating the waves and the city walls. This is the mechanical pollution of the environment. You feel the rhythmic sliminess of the prow beneath your fingers. This is the biology of the chemical sludge. You understand that the defense of Constantinople has rhythmically transformed the sea into an industrial wasteland. By the end of this hour of alchemical exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of liquid terror. You have seen the Greek fire rhythmically hold the water against the new age. You realize that the Byzantine navy is no longer powered by wood and wind, but by the mechanical logic of petroleum warfare. You grip the hot bronze siphon, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the chemical sting, and you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast, rhythmic flow of burning fluid. The acoustic of the distant hiss from the golden horn is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically carries through the mist, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically igniting its last reserve. You realize that you are not looking at a defense. You are looking at the mechanical suicides of the ancient alchemical arts. Tonight, As the air in your room becomes heavy and still, we descend beneath the foundations of the city to witness a war fought in total darkness, to understand why your survival would depend on the sensitivity of your inner ear. You must experience the physics of the subterranean war. While the great cannons batter the limestone from above, a mechanical duel is unfolding in the deep. The Ottoman Sultan has employed specialized miners from the silver mines of Serbia to rhythmically tunnel beneath the Theodosian Walls. You are standing in a narrow, timber-lined shaft deep under the Lycus Valley. The sensory transition is one of stifling humidity and the metallic scent of damp hematite and pine sap. The first rhythm of the subterranean war is the physics of the excavation, momentum. Mining is not a chaotic digging, it is a rhythmically managed removal of geological mass. You see the Serbian miners rhythmically swinging their iron picks against the hard clay. This is the mechanical fragmentation of the substrate. Behind them, a line of laborers rhythmically passes wicker baskets of debris toward the surface. This is the mathematics of the material displacement. You hear the rhythmic thud-chink of the metal hitting the earth. You realize that the Ottoman machine is rhythmically eroding the imperial foundation from the inside out. The second rhythm is the biology of the subterranean sensing within the city. The Byzantine defender, Johannes Grant, rhythmically monitors the earth for invasive vibrations. He does this using a mechanical acoustic sensor, a series of buckets filled with water or bells suspended from the ceiling. This is the physics of the harmonic resonance. You see the water surface rhythmically rippling as the Ottoman picks strike the foundation stone hundreds of yards away. This is the chemistry of the wave propagation. You feel the rhythmic thrum in the soles of your feet. This is the biology of the seismic detection. You understand that surviving beneath the walls involves developing a rhythmic sensitivity to the language of the earth. The mechanical reality of the counter-tunneling follows the detection. Once the direction is rhythmically calculated, the Byzantines rhythmically dig their own intercept shaft. This is the physics of the spatial intersection. You see the Byzantine sappers rhythmically bracing their tunnels with heavy oak beams. This is the mathematics of the structural load-bearing. You hear the rhythmic scrape of the shovels coming closer to the enemy wall. This is the acoustic of the impending collision. You realize that the underground is a mechanical maze where 1 inch's favira results in strategic failure. This is the chemistry of the dirt and sweat. The visual rhythm of the subterranean engagement occurs when the two tunnels rhythmically breach each other. The earth rhythmically collapses, and the darkness is illuminated by flickering torches. This is the physics of the confined space combat. There is no room for swords. The miners rhythmically fight with picks, shovels, and bare hands. This is the biology of the primal struggle. You feel the rhythmic heat of the compressed air. This is the mechanical limitation of the oxygen supply. You understand that surviving a day in the mines involves navigating through a rhythmic nightmare of dust and sudden death. The boring necessity of the timber calculus follows the excavation. The Sultan's engineers rhythmically calculate the amount of wood required to support the weight of the walls while they rhythmically hollow out the chamber. This is the mechanical engineering of the pre-collapse. You see the beams rhythmically greased with tallow to prevent squeaking. This is the chemistry of the friction reduction. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the carpenter's arms. This is the acoustic of the sawing oak. You understand that the wall is being rhythmically tricked into standing on a mechanical illusion. This is the physics of the structural deception. The acoustic of the earth collapse is the final forensic signature of the mine war. When the counterminers rhythmically set fire to the Ottoman support beams, the wood rhythmically weakens. This is the chemistry of the thermal degradation. Then comes the physics of the gravity reassertion. You hear the sound of thousands of tons of earth rhythmically filling the void. You realize that the Serbian miners are being rhythmically erased by the weight of the world they sought to undermine. This is the biology of the asphyxiation. The chemistry of the sulfur smoke follows the tunnel fires. As the beams rhythmically burn in the oxygen-starved environment, they produce a toxic carbon cloud. This is the mechanical failure of the ventilation. You feel the rhythmic sting in your throat. You understand that the war beneath the city is a biological chemical dead zone. This is the physics of the atmospheric poison. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical futility of the ancient burrowing tactics facing the forensic intelligence of the Byzantine engineers. By the end of this hour of subterranean exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of claustrophobic pressure. You have seen the mines rhythmically threaten the foundation of history. You realize that the Byzantine walls are no longer just vertical stone, but are mechanical weights suspended over a rhythmic void. You grip the cold iron pick, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the underground vibration. And you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast, rhythmic hearing of the earth whisperers. The acoustic of the deep rumble from beneath the St. Romanus gate is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically vibrates through the limestone, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically being hollowed by the patient hands of the destroyers. You realize that you are not looking at a tunnel. You are looking at the mechanical disintegration of the city's core tonight. As the air in your room cools to a steady, rhythmic chill, we emerge from the subterranean dark to witness the return of the giants. To understand why your survival would be measured by the structural integrity of timber, you must experience the physics of the Great Siege Tower. On the morning of May 18th, the Ottoman engineers unveiled a mechanical monolith nicknamed the Helepolis, or City Taker. It is a massive wooden tower, 4 stories high, designed to rhythmically bridge the gap between the earth and the top of the Theodosian Walls. You are standing on the battlements as this leviathan rhythmically lurks closer. The sensory transition is one of towering shadow and the dry scent of sawdust and rawhide. The first rhythm of the wooden leviathans is the physics of the rolling mass. A siege tower of this scale weighs dozens of tons, yet it must move across the uneven terrain of the Lycus Valley. This is the mechanical transformation of the topography. You see the Ottoman pioneers rhythmically laying a road of heavy oak planks directly in front of the tower's wheels. This is the mathematics of the load distribution. The wheels themselves are rhythmically solid oak, a meter thick, turning with a slow, unstoppable torque. You feel the rhythmic thrum in the stone walls as the earth is compacted beneath this moving fortress. You realize that the Ottoman machine is rhythmically erasing the distance with sheer mass. The second rhythm is the biology of the armor integument. To protect the tower from the Byzantine Greek fire and incendiary arrows, the engineers have rhythmically clad the entire wooden frame in wet oxides. This is the chemistry of the thermal inertia. You see the hides rhythmically dripping with water and vinegar. This is the mechanical prevention of the combustion. You feel the rhythmic coolness radiating from the wet skin. This is the biology of the protective layer. You understand that surviving beneath the tower involves becoming a part of a biological mechanical skin that refuses to ignite. This is the acoustic of the sizzling steam as Byzantine fire hits the hide. The mechanical reality of the drawbridge release follows the tower's approach. At the very top, a massive wooden ramp is rhythmically suspended by heavy hemp ropes and iron pulleys. This is the physics of the potential energy. You see the janissaries rhythmically crowding onto the upper platform, their weight increasing the downward pressure on the hinges. This is the mathematics of the center of gravity. You hear the rhythmic ratchet click of the winding gear. You realize that the tower is a mechanical spring, waiting to snap its iron teeth into the imperial stone. This is the chemistry of the rope tension. The visual rhythm of the height dominance occurs when the tower rhythmically reaches the parapet. Suddenly, the defenders are no longer looking down at their enemy. They are looking across at a level plane. This is the physics of the tactical equalization. You see the archers and hand cannoneers in the tower windows, rhythmically discharging their projectiles into the city. This is the mechanical saturation of the defense. You feel the rhythmic whistle of the arrows. This is the acoustic of the air friction. You understand that surviving a day on the walls involves navigating through a rhythmic crossfire that originates from the sky itself. The boring necessity of the scaffolding calculus follows the construction of the giants. The Sultan's master carpenters rhythmically measure the angle of the slope to ensure the tower does not rhythmically tip over. This is the mechanical engineering of the equilibrium. You see the spirit levels and a six-sized blueprint drafts rhythmically consulted by the light of torches. This is the mathematics of the vertical alignment. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the foreman's hands as he drives iron spikes into the joints. You understand that the Leviathan is rhythmically held together by structural logic rather than magic. The acoustic of the wooden groan is the final forensic signature of the tower assault. As the tower rhythmically leans against the stone wall, the oak beams produce a deep, strained shudder. You realize that the wood is rhythmically fighting the stone. This is the physics of the material conflict. When the Byzantine defenders rhythmically launch a barrel of Greek fire from a catapult, the hide armor finally fails. This is the chemistry of the ignition. You hear the sound of rushing air as the tower becomes a vertical furnace. This is the chemistry of the ashen drift follows the destruction of the tower. As the Leviathan rhythmically collapses back into the moat, it produces a thick, gray cloud of incinerated doke. This is the mechanical generation of the particulate matter. You feel the rhythmic sting in your eyes and the taste of charcoal in your mouth. This is the biology of the smoke inhalation. You understand that the great siege tower has rhythmically transformed from a moving fortress into a shattered pyre. By the end of this hour of tower exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of vertical dread. You have seen the wooden giants rhythmically scale the edge of the world. You realize that the Byzantine walls are no longer a high sanctuary, but are mechanical ledges, vulnerable to the rhythmic ascent of the Sultan's engineers. You grip the cold stone crenellation, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the vibration residue, and you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast, rhythmic burning of the wooden leviathans. The acoustic of the splintering beam from the St. Romanus gate is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically echoes through the dusk, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically being overwhelmed by the height of its replacement. You realize that you are not looking at a tower. You are looking at the mechanical escalation of the final assault tonight. As the rhythm of the siege engines slows into a heavy, metallic slumber, we step into the shadows of the postern gates. To understand why your survival would depend on the velocity of a silent strike, you must experience the physics of the great counter-sortie. While the Ottoman camp rests, the Byzantine defenders must rhythmically disrupt the mechanical progress of the enemy. This is the kinetic energy of the desperate strike. You are standing in the narrow corridor of a hidden side gate, the pili, waiting for the signal to emerge. The sensory transition is one of chilled iron and the sharp scent of linseed oil and darkened steel. The first rhythm of the nitrade is the physics of the low-light velocity. A sortie is not a battle of mass. It is a rhythmically controlled burst of speed. You see the Byzantine skirmishers rhythmically checking their equipment to ensure nothing rhythmically rattles. This is the mechanical silencing of the gear. They wrap their scabbards in cloth and blacken their blades with soot. This is the chemistry of the visual absorption. You hear the rhythmic hush of the wind through the crenellations. This is the acoustic of the tactical silence. You realize that the sortie is a mechanical needle designed to pierce the giant Ottoman organism at its weakest points. The second rhythm is the biology of the night vision adaptation. As you rhythmically step into the no man's land between the walls and the Ottoman trenches, your pupils rhythmically dilate. This is the physics of the light sensitivity. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your breath to maximize your auditory range. This is the biology of the sensory sharpening. You understand that surviving the darkness involves accepting a rhythmic hyper-awareness where every scuff of gravel is a mechanical warning. The mechanical reality of the engine sabotage follows the approach. The goal is the destruction of the Ottoman Siege. You see the raiders rhythmically driving iron spikes into the bronze touch holes of the cannons. This is the physics of the ventus bubbling. They rhythmically pour Greek fire, the secret fluid, onto the wooden wheels of the siege towers. This is the chemistry of the accelerated oxidation. You hear the rhythmic hiss of the ignition. This is the acoustic of the sabotage. You realize that the sortie is rhythmically turning the Ottoman mechanical advantage into industrial waste. The visual rhythm of the withdrawal phase occurs as the Ottoman camp rhythmically awakens to the fire. This is the physics of the alarm response. You see the raiders rhythmically sprinting back toward the safety of the walls. This is the mathematics of the escape velocity. Behind you, the Ottoman archers rhythmically discharge volleys into the darkness. This is the mechanical saturation of the void. You feel the rhythmic jolt of your heart as you reach the threshold of the gate. This is the biology of the adrenaline crash. You understand that surviving a sortie involves mastering the rhythmic gap between progression and disappearance. The boring necessity of the postern management follows the return. The Byzantine officers rhythmically count the raiders to ensure no enemy has rhythmically followed them inside. This is the mechanical integrity of the entry point. You see the heavy oak bars rhythmically dropped back into place. This is the physics of the door locking. You feel the rhythmic cramp in your shoulders from the weight of your shield. You understand that the sortie is rhythmically limited by the mechanical frailty of the human frame. The acoustic of the burning timber from the Ottoman lines is the final forensic signature of the raid. As the siege towers rhythmically smolder in the distance, the air is filled with the scent of charred pine. This is the mechanical generation of the pyrolytic residue. You realize that the raiders have rhythmically bought the city another day of stasis. This is the physics of the strategic delay. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the cooling metal as you clean your soot-stained blade. This is the chemistry of the maintenance. The chemistry of the night damp follows the engagement. As the fog rhythmically settles over the moat, It produces a beating moisture on the limestone. This is the mechanical condensation of the atmosphere. You feel the rhythmic slickness of the wall beneath your palm. This is the biology of the environmental stress. You understand that the night war is a biological, mechanical, high-stakes game, where time is the only currency. By the end of this hour of sortie exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of violent stealth. You have seen the hidden gates rhythmically release the last sting of the empire. You realize that the Byzantine defense is not just stone, but is a mechanical spring that rhythmically snaps at the enemy's throat. You grip the cold iron handle of the postern gate, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the adrenaline residue, and you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast, rhythmic courage of the nightwalkers. The acoustic of the closing latch is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically rings through the corridor, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically locking itself away from the inevitable. You realize that you are not looking at a raid. You are looking at the mechanical desperation of the final watch tonight. As the air in your room settles into a steady, rhythmic stillness, we move inward, away from the thunder of the walls and into the narrow, winding streets of the city. To understand why your survival would be dictated by the slow erosion of the gut, you must experience the physics of the great logistical struggle. A city under siege is not just a fortress. It is a biological organism that has been rhythmically decoupled from its source of energy. Constantinople, once the terminal of the Silk Road, is now a mechanical dead end. You are standing in the Forum of Constantine as the morning sun hits the porphyry column. The sensory transition is one of stale dust and the sour scent of empty granaries and vinegar. The first rhythm of the starving city is the physics of the caloric depletion. A human body requires a rhythmic intake of energy to maintain its structural integrity. You see the citizens rhythmically lining up at the state-controlled bakeries for their daily ration of annona. This is the mathematics of the diminishing return. The loaves are no longer made of pure wheat. They are rhythmically adulterated with ground pea flour and sawdust. This is the chemistry of the nutritional dilution. You hear the rhythmic scrape of the wooden scoops against the bottom of the flour bins. This is the acoustic of the scarcity. You realize that the city organism is rhythmically consuming its own muscle mass to stay alive. The second rhythm is the biology of the systemic fatigue. As the calories rhythmically vanish, the mechanical work capacity of the population rhythmically collapses. You see the laborers who rhythmically repair the walls, moving with a slow, heavy torpor. This is the physics of the energy conservation. Every movement is rhythmically calculated to minimize the exertion. This is the mathematics of the metabolic efficiency. You feel the rhythmic cramp in your stomach. This is the biology of the gastric stress. You understand that surviving the siege involves managing a rhythmic decline in your physical presence. The mechanical reality of the water management follows the food shortage. Constantinople depends on its rhythmic network of underground cisterns, like the Basilica cistern. This is the physics of the hydraulic reserve. You see the water carriers rhythmically lowering buckets into the dark void. This is the mathematics of the volume extraction. You hear the rhythmic splash echoing off the Medusa heads. This is the acoustic of the liquid capital. Because the aqueducts have been rhythmically cut by the Ottoman army, the city is rhythmically draining its last blood. This is the chemistry of the stagnation. You realize that the cistern is a mechanical battery that is rhythmically discharging toward zero. The visual rhythm of the social decay occurs in the marketplaces. The currency, the gold hyperpyron, rhythmically loses its value because there is nothing mechanical to buy. This is the physics of the economic entropy. You see the wealthy rhythmically trading silk and jewels for handfuls of dried figs. This is the chemistry of the valuing version. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the social hierarchy as it rhythmically flattens under the weight of hunger. This is the biology of the survival instinct. The scent of rosewater is rhythmically replaced by the pungent aroma of unwashed wool. This is the acoustic of the barter haggle. The boring necessity of the ration calculus follows the decline. The imperial bureaucrats rhythmically count the remaining sacks of grain in the monastery's cellars. This is the mechanical auditing of the doom. You see the A6-sized vellum scrolls, rhythmically marked with red ink to indicate the empty silos. This is the mathematics of the zero-sum game. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the clerk's hand as he realizes the city has only 2 weeks of rhythm left. This is the acoustic of the whispered catastrophe. You understand that the empire is rhythmically being deleted from the ledger before it is deleted from the map. The acoustic of the church bells is the final forensic signature of the internal struggle. They rhythmically ring, not for victory, but to rhythmically summon the people to pray for manna. This is the acoustic of the spiritual desperation. You realize that the bells are the only mechanical vibration that remains unchanged. This is the physics of the faith inertia. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the hollow belly. This is the mechanical reality of the biological famine. The chemistry of the vitamin deficiency follows the lack of fresh greens. As the citizens rhythmically develop the symptoms of scurvy, their gums rhythmically bleed. This is the biology of the tissue breakdown. You feel the rhythmic ache in your joints. This is the mechanical friction of the bone. You understand that the siege is a biological chemical experiment in This is the physics of the structural failure of the human frame. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical exhaustion of the ancient metropolis. By the end of this hour of logistical exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of inferno hollow. You have seen the city rhythmically evaporate from the inside. You realize that the Byzantine spirit is no longer powered by glory, but is rhythmically fading with the fast, rhythmic hunger of the deprived cell. You grip the cold stone column, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the weakness residue, and you understand that the imperial safety is dependent on the fast, rhythmic arrival of relief ships that never come. The acoustic of the silent kitchen is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically echoes through the empty ovens, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically turning off its own life. You realize that you are not looking at a siege. You are looking at the mechanical starvation of the last Roman citizen tonight. As the physical hunger of the city reaches a rhythmic plateau, we observe the mechanical shift from the material to the metaphysical. To understand why your survival would be tethered to a piece of painted wood or a fragment of bone, you must experience the physics of the great religious processions. When the mechanical defense of the walls and the biological defense of the stomach begin to fail, the city organism rhythmically resorts to spiritual kineticism. You are standing at the gates of the monastery of the Panagia Hodagatria. The sensory transition is one of heavy incense and a wax scent of burning tallow and ancient vellum. The first rhythm of the final hope is the physics of the collective oscillation. A procession is a rhythmically managed movement of human mass through a geometric grid. You see the priests and citizens rhythmically merging into a single column of motion. This is the mathematics of the synchronized step. They carry the icon of the Virgin Hodagatria, the protector of the city, along the inner circuit of the walls. This is the mechanical deployment of the Palladium. You hear the rhythmic drone of the Kyrie eleison Lord, have mercy echoing off the limestone. You realize that the procession is a mechanical shield designed to rhythmically strengthen the structural integument of the city through faith frequency. The second rhythm is the biology of the emotional resonance, as the icon rhythmically passes the soldiers on the battlements. Their neural chemistry experiences a systemic adrenaline reboot. This is the physics of the moral momentum. You see the exhausted men rhythmically crossing themselves. This is the mathematics of the ritual gesture. You feel the rhythmic steadying of the collective pulse. This is the biology of the group cohesion. You understand that surviving the terror involves accepting a rhythmic delusion of divine. This is the acoustic of the whispered prayer. The scent of sulfur from the Ottoman cannons is rhythmically masked by the pungent aroma of myrrh. The mechanical reality of the relic crystallization follows the procession. Inside the Hagia Sophia, the holy relics, the true cross, the crown of thorns are rhythmically displayed on the high altar. This is the physics of the sacred focus. You see the light from thousands of oil lamps rhythmically reflecting off the gold mosaic. This is the chemistry of the optic saturation. You hear the rhythmic chant of the choirs rising into the great dome. You realize that the relics are mechanical batteries of historical legitimacy, rhythmically discharging hope into the dying population. This is the mathematics of the veneration. The visual rhythm of the desperate aesthetics occurs in the streets. People rhythmically drape black cloth over the icons to signal to the heavens that the city is rhythmically mourning its own existence. This is the physics of the visual signal. You see the Emperor Constantine XI rhythmically removing his imperial regalia to walk humbly among the people. This is the biology of the leadership sacrifice. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the crowd as a lunar eclipse rhythmically darkens the sky. This is the physics of the celestiomen. The reddish glow of the moon produces a systemic panic. This is the chemistry of the superstition. The boring necessity of the ecclesiastical counting follows the spiritual drive. The patriarch's clerks rhythmically catalogued the gold and silver vessel that must be rhythmically melted down to pay the mercenaries. This is the mechanical conversion of the sacred into the kinetic. You see the censers and chalices rhythmically tossed into the crucible. This is the chemistry of the metallurgical sacrifice. You feel the rhythmic heat of the church furnace. This is the acoustic of the clinking. You understand that the faith is rhythmically being liquidated to purchase one more hour of wall integrity. This is the physics of the resource conversion. The acoustic of the final liturgy is the final forensic signature of the spiritual defense. On the night of May 28th, the Orthodox and Catholic priests rhythmically celebrate a unified Mass for the last time. You realize that the schism of centuries is rhythmically dissolved by the mechanical pressure of the impending assault. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the final hymn. This is the mechanical reality of the end-time aesthetic. The chemistry of the wax strip follows the conclusion of the service. As the thousands of candles rhythmically burn out, they leave a white residue on the marble floors. This is the mechanical sedimentation of the prayer. You feel the rhythmic slickness of the wax beneath your sandals. This is the biology of the spent energy. You understand that the great religious processions have rhythmically exhausted the spiritual reservoir of the empire. This is the physics of the hope entropy. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical prayer of a civilization that has run out of options. By the end of this hour of spiritual exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of sacred fatalism. You have seen the icons rhythmically fail to stop the cannons. You realize that the Byzantine spirit is now rhythmically preparing for the fast, rhythmic transition into eternity. You grip the cold silver frame of a reliquary, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the and you understand that the imperial safety is no longer dependent on the walls, but on the fast, rhythmic surrender to the inevitable. The acoustic of the extinguished flame in the Hagia Sophia is the final mechanical signal. As the sound of the final men rhythmically fades, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically turning off its own light. You realize that you are not looking at a service. You are looking at the mechanical burial of the Roman god. Tonight, as the air in your room becomes heavy with the acoustic of the impending shift, we return to the Lycus Valley sector of the Theodosian Walls. To understand why your survival would be a matter of material velocity, you must experience the physics of the Great Breach. By mid-May, the Ottoman basilic cannons have moved beyond structural testing and into systemic deconstruction. The limestone blocks, which stood for a millennium, are rhythmically turning into a kinetic slurry. You are standing in the gap between the inner and outer walls during the midnight shift. The sensory transition is one of choking limestone dust and the metallic scent of fresh sweat and wet earth. The first rhythm of the breach repair is the physics of the structural hemorrhage. When a 60-pound stone ball rhythmically impacts the wall, it does not just break the surface. It sends a shockwave through the rubble core. You see the inner integument of the city rhythmically collapsing outward. This is the mathematics of the load-bearing failure. To survive, the Byzantine engineers must rhythmically counteract this entropy. You see the citizens rhythmically dragging wine casks and grain sacks filled with earth into the gap. This is the mechanical substitution of the masonry. You hear the rhythmic thud of the burlap hitting the rubble. This is the acoustic of the emergency plugging. You realize that the wall is being rhythmically rebuilt as a soft armor machine designed to absorb the kinetic energy of the cannons. The second rhythm is the biology of the human chain, because the mechanical cranes of the city have been rhythmically destroyed. The mass transfer of repair material is entirely biological. You see a line of men, women, and children rhythmically passing limestone fragments from the inner city to the breach. This is the physics of the manual throughput. You feel the rhythmic cramp in your lower back and the abrasive heat in your palms. This is the mechanical friction of the labor. You understand that surviving the night involves maintaining a rhythmic consistency that outpaces the rate of the destruction. This is the acoustic of the labored breathing. The scent of pulverized stone is rhythmically mixed with the pungent aroma of vinegar soaked leather used to dampen the dust. The mechanical reality of the timber palisade follows the earth filling. To rhythmically stabilize the soft repair, the carpenters rhythmically drive sharpened stake rows into the earth mounds. This is the physics of the structural reinforcement. You see the mallets rhythmically falling onto the oak heads. This is the mathematics of the impact force. You hear the rhythmic crack thump of the wood entering the clay. This is the acoustic of the timber fixation. You realize that the stone empire is rhythmically transforming into a wooden earthwork hybrid. This is the chemistry of the sap and soil. You feel the rhythmic flex of the palisade as it prepares to receive the next impact. The visual rhythm of the night illumination occurs during the repair process. The Ottoman gunners rhythmically fire incendiaries to light up the breach so they can rhythmically aim their great guns. You see the orange glow rhythmically flickering against the dust clouds. This is the chemistry of the combustion. You feel the rhythmic heat spike as a fire pot explodes nearby. This is the biology of the thermal shock. You understand that surviving the breach involves working within a rhythmic shadow that refuses to be seen by the Sultan's mathematicians. This is the acoustic of the whizzing projectiles. The boring necessity of the debris calculus follows the moonlight. The Byzantine overseers rhythmically calculate the volume of material removed by the cannons versus the volume of material replaced by the night shift. This is the mechanical audit of the siege stamina. You see the A6-sized vellum charts, rhythmically marked with grid lines to identify the critical thinning of the St. Romanus sector. This is the mathematics of the impending void. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the overseer's voice as he realizes the rate of loss is rhythmically increasing. This is the acoustic of the whispered despair. You understand that the empire is rhythmically running out of mass. The acoustic of the dust settling is the final forensic signature of the repair cycle. When the work gang rhythmically pauses at dawn, the fine powder of the destroyed empire rhythmically falls onto their shoulders. This is the physics of the atmospheric sedimentation. You realize that the people are rhythmically becoming one with the walls they are saving. This is the biology of the lithic assimilation. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the exhaustion numbness. This is the mechanical reality of the human limit. The chemistry of the limestone reaction follows the exposure to the morning mist. As the hydrated lime in the dust rhythmically reacts with the damper, it produces a slight heat and a chalky aftertaste in your mouth. This is the mechanical sensation of the alteration. You feel the rhythmic grittiness between your teeth. This is the biology of the geological encroachment. You understand that the breach repair is a biological mechanical race against the physics of the kinetic curature. This is the acoustic of the scraping trowel. By the end of this hour of breach exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of structural fragility. You have seen the Theodosian machine, rhythmically patchwork with dirt and wood. You realize that the imperial safety is no longer dependent on the solid limestone, but on the fast, rhythmic desperation of the earth fillers. You grip a rough oak stake, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the splinter pane, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic stability of the emergency wall. The acoustic of the distant cannon ignition is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically signals the end of the night shift, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically readying to shatter the work of the darkness. This is the acoustic of the doomed fort. You realize that you are not looking at a repair. You are looking at the mechanical stalling of the inevitable opening. Tonight, as the rhythmic thrum of the Ottoman guns creates a steady vibration in the earth, we turn our gaze to the top of the Theodosian Walls to witness the mechanical response. To understand why your survival would be a matter of shattering recoil, you must experience the physics of the great counter-battery. The Byzantines are not merely passive targets. They possess their own artillery, though it operates on a different mechanical logic. While the Sultan uses mass and volume, the Emperor relies on velocity and precision. You are standing on a reinforced stone platform behind a medium-sized bronze bombard. The sensory transition is one of acrid smoke and the metallic tingle of overheated bronze. The first rhythm of the counter-battery is the physics of the high-velocity deflection. The Byzantine cannons are smaller and more maneuverable than the Ottoman basilic. This is the mechanical advantage of the elevation. From your high vantage point, The Byzantine gunners rhythmically aim at the Ottoman crews and the wooden carriages of the great guns. This is the mathematics of the ballistic trajectory. You see the stone balls rhythmically launched with a higher muzzle velocity. This is the chemistry of the refined black. You hear the rhythmic crack of the discharge, followed by the whistle of the projectile. This is the acoustic of the precision strike. You realize that the counter battery is a mechanical scalpel designed to rhythmically amputate the Sultan's artillery train. The second rhythm is the biology of the recoil stress. When a Byzantine gun fires, the mechanical energy is rhythmically transferred into the stone platform. This is the physics of the structural vibration. Because the walls are already rhythmically weakened by the Ottoman bombardment, each shot from the defenders threatens to shatter the very foundation they stand on. You feel the rhythmic shockwave traveling through your shins and teeth. This is the mechanical reality of the self-damage. You understand that surviving the artillery duel involves managing a rhythmic paradox where your own weapon is rhythmically deconstructing your own fortress. This is the acoustic of the mason. The mechanical reality of the bronze fatigue follows the high-frequency firing. To rhythmically maintain the accuracy, the gunners must rhythmically scrape the carbon residue from the bore after every 3 shots. This is the chemistry of the combustion byproducts. You see the long-handled brushes rhythmically entering the muzzle. This is the physics of the cleaning friction. You hear the rhythmic hiss-scrape of the wet burlap against the hot metal. This is the acoustic of the maintenance rhythm. You realize that the gun is rhythmically losing its integument with every explosion. This is the biology of the metallicware. You feel the rhythmic heat leaping from the barrel. This is the mathematics of the thermal expansion. The visual rhythm of the target correction occurs during the midday exchange. The Byzantine mathematicians rhythmically adjust the wooden wedges beneath the gun breech to correct for the wind resistance. This is the physics of the aerodynamic adjustment. You see the plumb lines and a 6-sized range tables rhythmically consulted under the sun glare. This is the mathematics of the strategic calibration. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the aimer's eyes as he focuses on the distant flashes of the Ottoman batteries. This is the acoustic of the whispered coordinates. You understand that surviving a day as a gunner involves becoming a mechanical extension of the bronze sights. The boring necessity of the powder calculus follows the supply shortage. The Grand Logothete rhythmically audits the remaining sacks of saltpeter and sulfur in the imperial armory. This is the mechanical accounting of the kinetic climate. You see the rationing orders rhythmically drafted on vellum scraps to reduce the powder charge by 10%. This is the mathematics of the resource throttling. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the armorer's hands as he realizes the empire is rhythmically running out of potential energy. This is the acoustic of the scraping shovel. You understand that the imperial safety is rhythmically evaporating with every shot. The acoustic of the bronze burst is the final forensic signature of the artillery war. When a Byzantine gun rhythmically overheats, the internal stress finally exceeds the tensile strength of the alloy. This is the physics of the catastrophic failure. You hear the sound of tearing metal, a screaming whine, followed by a dull crump. This is the acoustic of the industrial death. You realize that the gunner team is rhythmically erased by their own machine. This is the biology of the fragmentation. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the metallic scree. This is the mechanical reality of the hypershore demise. The chemistry of the niter taste follows the long day of firing. As the gunpowder smoke rhythmically settles over the battlements, it leaves a bitter, salty residue on your tongue. This is the mechanical sensation of the chemical inhalation. You feel the rhythmic sting in your nostrils. This is the biology of the mucosal irritation. You understand that the defense of the city is a biological, chemical, high-stakes gamble, where metal is the only language spoken. This is the physics of the ballistic dialogue. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical obsolescence of the fortress artillery facing an infinite siege train. By the end of this hour of artillery exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of recoil fatigue. You have seen the bronze mouths rhythmically bark at the dusk. You realize that the Byzantine defense is no longer stoic stone, but is a mechanical engine that is rhythmically burning out its own gears. You grip a cold iron ramrod, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the vibration aftershock, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic accuracy of the dying guns. The acoustic of the final cool-down at sunset is the final mechanical signal. As the sound of the rushing water rhythmically quenches the bronze barrel, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically sizzling into the cold dark. This is the acoustic of the thermal end. You realize that you are not looking at a battery. You are looking at the mechanical exhaustion of the last Roman weaponry. Tonight, as the rhythm of the waves against the city walls becomes a steady, hypnotic pulse, we move from the stone ramparts to the open water of the Sea of Marmara. To understand why your survival would be a matter of fluid dynamics and timber stress, you must experience the physics of the Great Sea Battle. It is April 20th. 4 massive ships, 3 Genoese galleons, and 1 Byzantine transporter, rhythmically charging toward the Golden Horn. They carry the biological fuel of grain and the mechanical fuel of soldiers. You are standing on the high casselle of a Genoese carrack. The sensory transition is one of heaving salt spray and the taut scent of stretched hemp and wet canvas. The first rhythm of the sea battle is the physics of the high-sided momentum. These European ships are rhythmically built like floating cathedrals, towering over the low Ottoman galleys. This is the mechanical advantage of the displacement. As the Ottoman fleet rhythmically swarms around you, their oars rhythmically churning the surface, they find themselves trapped in your kinetic shadow. You see the Ottoman vessels rhythmically bouncing off your oak hull. This is the mathematics of the inertia. You hear the rhythmic crunch of timber. This is the acoustic of the naval collision. You realize that the relief ships are mechanical juggernauts designed to rhythmically plow through the water blockade using gravity and wind. The second rhythm is the biology of the wind capture. To reach the Golden Horn, the ships must rhythmically harness the southerly gale. This is the physics of the aerodynamic lift. You see the massive canvas sails rhythmically bulging under the atmospheric pressure. This is the mathematics of the surface area. You hear the rhythmic snap of the ropes as the wind pulls at the masts. This is the acoustic of the structural tension. You understand that surviving the harbor approach involves managing a rhythmic balance between the power of the storm and the stability of the ballast. This is the biology of the inner equilibrium. The scent of ocean brine is rhythmically mixed with the pungent aroma of gunpowder as the deckons rhythmically discharge. The mechanical reality of the boarding resistance follows the naval clench. As the Ottoman soldiers rhythmically attempt to scale the high sides of the carracks, the Genoese sailors rhythmically deploy naphtha pots and heavy crossbows. This is the physics of the vertical defense. You see the grappling hooks rhythmically cast and then rhythmically severed with axes. This is the mathematics of the mechanical detachment. You hear the rhythmic whir of the bolt knocks and the splash of bodies falling into the Marmara. This is the acoustic of the attrition. You realize that the ship is a floating fortress that rhythmically denies the enemy access to its internal metabolism. The visual rhythm of the harbor entry transition occurs as the ships rhythmically approach the Great Chain. The wind suddenly rhythmically fails at the mouth of the Horn. This is the physics of the calms. For a stalling moment, the relief ships are rhythmically motionless, surrounded by hundreds of Ottoman galleys. This is the mathematics of the siege stasis. You see the Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically spurring his horse into the surf, screaming for his admirals to board the Christian giants. This is the biology of the strategic panic. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the hull as the Ottoman oars rhythmically beat against the planking. This is the acoustic of the drum pulse. The boring necessity of the rigging calculus follows the repair under fire. The Genoese boatswains rhythmically spliced the severed lines to rhythmically regain control of the rudders. This is the mechanical maintenance of the steering. You see the A6-sized naval charts rhythmically consulted to find the deep water channel. This is the mathematics of the bathymetry. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the helmsman's arms as he fights the current. This is the acoustic of the creaking tiller. You understand that the imperial rescue is rhythmically dependent on the structural logic of the rope and pulley. The acoustic of the chain drop is the final forensic signature of the naval success. Just as the relief ships are rhythmically overwhelmed, the Byzantine defenders rhythmically lower the Great Chain to allow them passage. This is the mechanical opening of the sanctuary. You hear the sound of iron links rhythmically slumping into the mud. This is the acoustic of the harbor gasp. You realize that the four ships have rhythmically slipped through the teeth of the Ottoman Valve. This is the biology of the collective relief. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the decelerating mass. The chemistry of the wet tokesmell follows the safety docking. As the ships rhythmically glide into the Golden Horn, the air is filled with the scent of damp grain and saturated wood. This is the mechanical sensation of the logistical arrival. You feel the rhythmic stillness of the harbor water. This is the biology of the equilibrium restoration. You understand that the relief ships have rhythmically extended the city clock by weeks. This is the physics of the caloric injection. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical triumph of the medieval galleon facing the numerical superiority of the Sultan. By the end of this hour of maritime collision, you are vibrating with a sense of hydraulic victory. You have seen the Phrygians rhythmically break the sea steel. You realize that the imperial safety is now rhythmically prolonged by the fast, rhythmic flow of Western supplies. You grip a rough hempstay, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the rope burn, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic delivery of wheat and men. The acoustic of the sails furling in the dusk is the final mechanical signal. As the sound of the canvas rhythmically collapses against the masts, you hear the sound of a world that has rhythmically earned a moment of oxygen. This is the acoustic of the naval end. You realize that you are not looking at a battle. You are looking at the mechanical heartbeat of a dying empire, rhythmically skipping a beat. Tonight, as the rhythm of the city's remaining hope begins to oscillate with the cooling evening air, we turn our attention to the narrow exits of the Golden Horn to understand why survival would be a matter of buoyancy and human mass. Displacement. You must experience the physics of the great abandonment. While the relief ships brought a rhythmic injection of supplies, the mechanical reality of the situation has become clear to the merchant class and the foreign dignitaries. The city is a closing trap. You are standing on a dark, oil-slicked quay near the Venetian quarter. The sensory transition is one of muffled echoes and the cold scent of wet burlap and brackish water. The first rhythm of the fleeing populations is the physics of the weight-volume balance. Escape is not a matter of simply boarding a boat. It is a rhythmically managed calculation of how much imperial wealth can be displaced into a small vessel. You see the Venetian merchants rhythmically loading crates of silk and bars of silver into light rowboats or skiffs. This is the mathematics of the cargo load. If the boat is rhythmically overloaded, its center of gravity shifts and the Bosporus currents will rhythmically consume it. This is the physics of the hydrostatic stability. You hear the rhythmic slap of the water against the overburdened holes. This is the acoustic of the liquid risk. You realize that the abandonment is a mechanical auction where space is the only currency. The second rhythm is the biology of the silent exodus. To avoid the rhythmic detection of the Ottoman guard galleys, the fleeing boats must rhythmically glide without the use of heavy oars in the locks. This is the mechanical requirement of the stealth. You see families rhythmically passing small children from the dock to the hold. This is the physics of the human handoff. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your hand as you lower a valuable casket into the shadows. This is the biology of the adrenaline suppression. You understand that surviving the escape involves accepting a rhythmic invisibility. This is the acoustic of the whispered farewell. The scent of old wood is rhythmically mixed with the pungent aroma of fierce wet. The mechanical reality of the sail muffling follows the boarding. To rhythmically prevent the canvas from snapping in the wind and signaling their position, the sailors rhythmically wrap the rings in wool scraps. This is the physics of the acoustic dampening. You see the rudders rhythmically greased with animal fat to eliminate the mechanical squeal. This is the chemistry of the friction reduction. You hear the rhythmic soft swish of the water as the boat rhythmically disconnects from the imperial stone. This is the acoustic of the severance. You realize that the city is rhythmically shedding its commercial cells like a dying organism. This is the mathematics of the urban dissolution. The visual rhythm of the navigational dread occurs once the boats rhythmically enter the open Marmara. The navigators must rhythmically align their path with the stars while rhythmically avoiding the fires of the Ottoman watchpoints. This is the physics of the optical orientation. You see the A6-sized portalanchars rhythmically consulted by the flicker of a shrouded lantern. This is the mathematics of the marine cartography. You feel the rhythmic jolt of the current pushing the hull toward the enemy. This is the biology of the navigational stress. You understand that surviving the night involves navigating through a rhythmic minefield of visual detection. The boring necessity of the passenger manifest follows the departure. The Venetian bailo rhythmically tallies the names of the families that have rhythmically escaped the encirclement. This is the mechanical auditing of the survival rate. You see the infantries rhythmically scratched onto parchment to inform the senates of Venice and Genoa. This is the mathematics of the historical record. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the clerk's pen as he realizes that 90% of the Latin population is rhythmically left behind. This is the acoustic of the final tally. You understand that the empire is rhythmically losing its human archive as the wealth flees to the west. The acoustic of the ore drip is the final forensic signature of the exodus. As the boats rhythmically move further into the distance, the sound of the dropping water rhythmically fades into the background noise of the sea. This is the physics of the acoustic dissipation. you realize that the fleeing boats are rhythmically becoming invisible dots on the horizon. This is the biology of the strategic evacuation. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the survivor guilt. This is the mechanical reality of the moral weight. The chemistry of the cold mist follows the departure of the last skiff. As the temperature rhythmically drops, the fog rhythmically coats the empty docks in a fine layer of dew. This is the mechanical condensation of the silence. You feel the rhythmic slickness of the wood beneath your boots. This is the biology of the environmental assimilation. You understand that the great abandonment has rhythmically transformed the harbor from a place of commerce into a place of ghosts. This is the acoustic of the lapping emptiness. By the end of this hour of exodus exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of fluid loss. You have seen the city as blood rhythmically drain away into the darkness. You realize that the imperial safety is now reserved for those with the mechanical means of flotation. You grip a cold iron mooring ring, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the abandonment residue, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic disappearance of those who could have stayed. The acoustic of the distant bell from a departing galley is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically carries through the mist, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically cutting its anchor ropes to save itself. This is the acoustic of the severed end. You realize that you are not looking at a departure. You are looking at the mechanical decoupling of the Byzantine economy tonight, as the rhythm of the external bombardment creates a steady, vibrating backdrop to the night. We turn our focus inward to the biological chaos of the city's center. To understand why your survival would be threatened not by an Ottoman blade, but by the kinetic friction of your neighbors, you must experience the physics of the Great Hunger Epidemic. By mid-May, the mechanical distribution of grain has ceased to function. The city is no longer a structured society. It has become a high-pressure gas canister of human desperation. You are standing in the mesa, the great central artery of the city, near the Forum of Amastrinum. The sensory transition is one of sharp adrenaline and the iron scent of blood and cold asphalt. The first rhythm of the hunger panic is the physics of the crowd turbulence. When the biological energy of a population rhythmically drops below a certain threshold, the social cohesion rhythmically snaps. You see the citizens rhythmically pulsing toward the closed doors of the monastic granaries. This is the mathematics of the density pressure. As the crowd rhythmically compresses against the timber gates, the physics of the fluid dynamics takes over. You hear the rhythmic groan of the wood fibers and the sharp crack of structural failure. This is the acoustic of the breaking point. You realize that the panic is a mechanical force that rhythmically crushes the individual against the stone. The second rhythm is the biology of the aggressive metabolism. In the absence of nutritional input, the human system rhythmically reverts to primal kineticism. You see neighbors who once rhythmically swapped greetings, now rhythmically fighting over a single bag of millet. This is the physics of the resource conflict. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your own pulse as you prepare to defend your position. This is the biology of the fight or flight. You understand that surviving the riot involves navigating a rhythmic savage logic. This is the acoustic of the uncoordinated shooting. The scent of rosewater is rhythmically erased by the pungent aroma of dust and panic sweat. The mechanical reality of the gate breaching follows the crowd surge. To rhythmically access the hidden supplies, the citizens rhythmically employ makeshift drums, fallen roof beams, or iron bars. This is the physics of the impelic force. You see the gates rhythmically buckling under the synchronized thrusts. This is the mathematics of the kinetic transfer. You hear the rhythmic thud-thud crash as the hinges rhythmically fail. This is the acoustic of the structural dissolution. You realize that the city is rhythmically destroying its own infrastructure to satisfy its biological urgency. This is the chemistry of the destructive energy. The visual rhythm of the urban entropy occurs in the aftermath of the granary raids. The grain is rhythmically spilled onto the dirt, mixing with the blood of those rhythmically trampled. This is the physics of the material waste. You see the Emperor's guards rhythmically attempting to restore her with blunt polearms. This is the mechanical application of the stet force. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the earth as the Ottoman from the horizon rhythmically remind the rioters of the external threat. This is the acoustic of the overlapping chaos. You understand that surviving a riot involves positioning yourself in the rhythmic voids of the crowd mass. The boring necessity of the stockpile calculation follows the collapse of the grain stores. The city prefect rhythmically attempts to catalog what remains of the scattered flour. This is the mechanical auditing of the void. You see the A6-sized vellum ledgers rhythmically marked with crosses to indicate the looted warehouses. This is the mathematics of the negative sum game. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the official's hand as he realizes the city has rhythmically consumed its last safety net in 6 hours. This is the acoustic of the bureaucratic gasp. You understand that the empire is rhythmically ending because its internal metabolism has rhythmically devoured its own future. The acoustic of the sobbing city is the final forensic signature of the hunger panic. As the riot rhythmically exhausts itself, the sound of violence is rhythmically replaced by a low, persistent moan of regret and exhaustion. This is the physics of the acoustic decay. You realize that the citizens are rhythmically slumping against the walls they just breached. This is the biology of the metabolic crash. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the hunger cramp. This is the mechanical reality of the starving organism. The chemistry of the iron scent follows the violence. As the blood on the stones rhythmically oxidizes, it produces a metallic tang in the air. This is the mechanical sensation of the biological degradation. You feel the rhythmic slickness of the pavement beneath your boots. This is the biology of the traumatic residue. You understand that the internal riots have rhythmically weakened the city more than 1,000 cannonballs. This is the physics of the social fracture. By the end of this hour of internal exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of systemic failure. You have seen the Byzantine order rhythmically shredded by the mathematics of the hunger. You realize that the imperial safety is now non-existent, destroyed by the fast, rhythmic panic of the dying population. You grip a cold iron spear shaft, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the conflict tension, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on a fast, rhythmic discipline that has rhythmically vanished. The acoustic of the silent forum in the dusk is the final mechanical signal. As the sound of the crowd rhythmically dissipates, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically realizing it has killed its own last chance. This is the acoustic of the social end. You realize that you are not looking at a riot. You are looking at the mechanical implosion of the Roman state. Tonight, as the city's internal metabolism slows into a rhythmic, exhausted stupor, the sky itself begins to rhythmically intervene. To understand why your survival would be dictated by the physics of the optical phenomena, you must experience the physics of the Great Comet. In late May 1453, A celestial body later, known as Halley's comet, appeared over the city. In the pre-modern mind, the heavens were a mechanical clock of divine intent. When that clock rhythmically deviated, the psychological integrity of the population rhythmically shattered. You are standing on the roof of the Pantocrator Monastery. The sensory transition is one of deepening cold and the ozone scent of ionized air and night mist. The first rhythm of the celestial terror is the physics of the luminance anomaly. A comet is not a static point of light. It is a rhythmically shifting object with a tail of gas and dust that rhythmically scatters the sunlight. You see the comet rhythmically hanging over the Hagia Sophia. This is the mathematics of the orbital mechanics. Its tail rhythmically points like a flaming sword toward the west. This is the physics of the solar wind pressure. You hear the rhythmic murmur of the crowds watching the sky. This is the acoustic of the collective dread. You realize that the comet is a mechanical omen that rhythmically overrides the terrestrial tactics of the siege. The second rhythm is the biology of the atmospheric illusion. On the night of May 25th, a strange light rhythmically enveloped the dome of the Hagia Sophia. This was likely a St. Elmo's fire or a thermal inversion, rhythmically reflecting the city fires. This is the chemistry of the plasma discharge. You see the ethereal glow rhythmically rising from the golden cross into the clouds. This is the physics of the electrostatic charge. You feel the rhythmic steadying of your vision as you try to identify the source. This is the biology of the optical processing. You understand that surviving the panic involves navigating a rhythmic falsehood where weather is interpreted as spirit. This is the acoustic of the panicked gasp. The mechanical reality of the celestial mapping follows the sighting. The Byzantine astronomers rhythmically consult their astrolabes and ancient Greek texts to rhythmically calculate the meaning of the visitor. This is the physics of the astrometric analysis. You see the bronze discs rhythmically rotating under the starlight. This is the mathematics of the spherical trigonometry. You hear the rhythmic chink of the metal pointers. This is the acoustic of the scientific duration. You realize that the astrolabe is a mechanical attempt to rhythmically predict the unpredictable. This is the chemistry of the verdigris bronze. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the scholar's hands. The visual rhythm of the Ottoman reaction occurs across the no man's land. The Sultan's astrologers rhythmically interpret the comet as a signal of Ottoman victory. This is the physics of the propagandistic optics. You see the Ottoman camp rhythmically erupting in cheering and drumbeat. This is the acoustic of the psychological momentum. In contrast, the Byzantine population rhythmically shrinks into the shadows. This is the biology of the defeatist metabolism. You understand that the comet is rhythmically functioning as a kinetic force multiplier for the aggressor and a mechanical brake for the defender. The boring necessity of the calendar calculus follows the omen. The clergy rhythmically compare the comet's appearance with the annals of the emperors to find a historical precedent. This is the mechanical search for the precedent. You see the A6-sized vellum chronicles rhythmically flipped by candlelight. This is the mathematics of the chronology. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the monk's finger as he finds that comets rhythmically precede the fall of kingdoms. This is the acoustic of the closing book. You understand that the empire is rhythmically deleting its own will to live through statistical terror. The acoustic of the thunderless lightning is the final forensic signature of the celestial event. As the atmospheric pressure rhythmically shifts during the storm front, silent flashes illuminate the walls. This is the physics of the distant discharge. You realize that the environment is rhythmically mimicking the chaos of the war. This is the biology of the environmental stress. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the static electricity. This is the mechanical reality of the atmospheric tension. The chemistry of the night ionization follows the glow. As the air rhythmically charges, it produces a slight metallic tingle on your skin. This is the mechanical sensation of the electrical gradient. You feel the rhythmic raising of the hairs on your arms. This is the biology of the pillow erection. You understand that the celestial terror is a biological mechanical synthesis of light and fear. This is the physics of the psychological warfare. You realize that you are looking at the mechanical erosion of the Byzantine mind. By the end of this hour of celestial exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of cosmic inevitable. You have seen the sky rhythmically withdraw its support from the city. You realize that the imperial safety is now non-existent, drowned by the fast rhythmic luminance of the comet. You grip a cold marble finial, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the static residue, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on a fast rhythmic alignment that has rhythmically broken. The acoustic of the fading glow in the dawn is the final mechanical signal. As the light of the comet rhythmically vanishes into the blue light, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically realizing it is truly alone. This is the acoustic of the existential end. You realize that you are not looking at a comet. You are looking at the mechanical sunset. Tonight, as the mechanical tension of the siege reaches its absolute limit, we enter the private chambers of the Blacherney Palace. To understand why your survival would be a matter of sovereign weight, you must experience the physics of the Great Council. On the night of May 26th, the command structure of the Roman world rhythmically crystallizes for the last time. While the city walls are rhythmically thinning, the political metabolism of the leadership must decide between withdrawal and extinction. You are standing in the shadows of the council chamber, where the scent of old ink meets the sharp aroma of burning olive oil. The first rhythm of the final command is the physics of the command inertia. A high command is a mechanical system designed to process information and output force. You see Emperor Constantine XI rhythmically pacing the length of the marble floor. This is the mathematics of the deliberation. His advisors, Byzantine nobles, Genoese captains, and Venetian bailiffs are rhythmically segmented into factions. This is the physics of the social pressure. You hear the rhythmic clink of the imperial signet ring against the wooden table. This is the acoustic of the looming decision. You realize that the council is a mechanical governor that is rhythmically failing to control the acceleration of the siege. The second rhythm is the biology of the sovereign refusal to rhythmically survive. The emperor has been advised to flee to the Peloponnese to rebuild the imperial structure. This is the mathematics of the strategic withdrawal, but Constantine rhythmically rejects the path of the escape. This is the physics of the moral friction. You see his shoulders rhythmically square as he commits to death within the walls. This is the biology of the final posturing. You understand that surviving the meeting involves accepting a rhythmic fatalism, where the head of the state becomes one with the structure of the wall. This is the acoustic of the vow. The mechanical reality of the Sultan's strategic optimization follows the council's internal struggle. Across the lines, Sultan Mehmed II is rhythmically operating his own command machine with industrial efficiency. He is not deliberating, he is calibrating. You see the Sultan rhythmically reviewing the firing reports from the Basilic battery. This is the physics of the data analysis. He rhythmically discards the advice of his old vizier Halal Pasha, who suggests a diplomatic ceasefire. This is the chemistry of the generational shift. The Sultan rhythmically commands the construction of floating bridges across the Golden Horn. This is the mathematics of the flanking maneuver. You realize that the Sultan is a mechanical optimizer who rhythmically eliminates sentimental obstacles. The visual rhythm of the final orders occurs as the Byzantine officers rhythmically transcribe the deployment grid for the final watch. This is the physics of the tactical distribution. You see the A6-sized vellum orders, rhythmically sealed with red wax. This is the mathematics of the distribution. The emperor rhythmically assigns the Genoese Giustiniani to the Lycus Valley, the most vulnerable sector. This is the biology of the trust placement. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the palace walls as the Sultan's guns rhythmically remind the council that time is a depleting resource. This is the acoustic of the boring necessity of the legacy calculus follows the command decision. The imperial secretaries rhythmically burn the archives to prevent sensitive data from rhythmically falling into Ottoman hands. This is the mechanical erasure of the identity. You see the ink entries rhythmically turning to ash. This is the chemistry of the combustion. You feel the rhythmic heat of the palace hearth. This is the acoustic of the crackling paper. You understand that the empire is rhythmically preparing to exist only in the mechanical memory of its successors. This is the mathematics of the historical transition. The acoustic of the Sultan's drums is the final forensic signature of the command cycle. From the Ottoman camp, the metaband rhythmically signals the beginning of the final preparation period. This is the acoustic of the psychological mobilization. You realize that the Sultan has rhythmically synchronized the heartbeats of 80,000 men to the pulse of his own will. This is the biology of the total war. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the looming assault. This is the mechanical reality of the final countdown. The chemistry of the incense and steel follows the conclusion of the meeting. As the emperor rhythmically arms himself for the final morning, his armor is rhythmically anointed by the priests. This is the mechanical sensation of the ritual preparation. You feel the rhythmic weight of the imperial breastplate as it is fastened with bronze buckles. This is the biology of the physical constraint. You understand that the Great Council has rhythmically transformed the empire from a political entity into a martyrdom machine. This is the physics of the final stance. By the end of this hour of command exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of resolute gloom. You have seen the leadership rhythmically weld itself to the fate of the limestone. You realize that the imperial safety is now non-existent, sacrificed to the fast, rhythmic integrity of the last command. You grip a cold marble column, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the political tension, and you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic ending of the Roman story. The acoustic of the Sultan's trumpet from the west is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically announces the end of the deliberation, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically readying to collide for the last time. This is the acoustic of the commandant. You realize that you are not looking at a meeting. You are looking at the mechanical closure of the Byzantine will tonight. As the mechanical pulse of the siege reaches its terminal deceleration, we stand upon the Mesopotamian, the most battered sector of the walls. To understand why your survival would be dictated by the acoustic of the absence, you must experience the physics of the Great Silence. On the night of May 28th, Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically imposed a total cessation of hostilities. The cannons rhythmically ceased their ballistic dialogue. The drums rhythmically vanished. You are standing in the sudden, terrifying vacuum of sound. The sensory transition is one of eerie stillness and the cold scent of wet ash and ozone. The first rhythm of the final night is the physics of the sound vacuum. For 53 days, the Byzantine mind has been rhythmically conditioned to the acoustic violence of the bombardment. When the mechanical noise rhythmically stops, the sensory deprivation produces a systemic panic. You see the soldiers rhythmically straining their ears to find a sound in the darkness. This is the biology of the auditory threshold. The silence is not empty. It is rhythmically weighted with the mass of the impending assault. This is the mathematics of the psychological pressure. You hear the rhythmic ring of the tinnitus in your own ears. This is the acoustic of the internal vibration. The second rhythm is the biology of the Sultan's psychological warfare. Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically engineered this silence to break the remaining nerves of the defenders. By rhythmically removing the noise, he forces the Byzantines to listen to their own fear. This is the physics of the internalized conflict. You see the Sultan rhythmically moving through his silent camp, ensuring that every man is rhythmically readying his ladder and blade. This is the mechanical preparation of the kinetic human wave. You understand that surviving the silence involves managing a rhythmic dread that is heavier than the cannonballs. This is the acoustic of the unspready men. To rhythmically disorient the defenders, the Sultan rhythmically commands the ignition of thousands of campfires and lanterns simultaneously. This is the physics of the optical overload. You see the horizon rhythmically erupt in a sea of fire. This is the chemistry of the combustion. From the walls, it looks as if the earth is rhythmically burning. This is the mathematics of the visual intimidation. You hear the rhythmic crackle of the distant torches. This is the acoustic of the visual pulse. You realize that the Sultan is rhythmically sculpting the inevitable dawn. The visual rhythm of the final rations occurs in both camps. Within the city, the emperor rhythmically distributes the last scraps of bread and wine. This is the biology of the communal Eucharist. In the Ottoman camp, the Sultan rhythmically promises the wealth of the city to his janissaries. This is the chemistry of the incentive activation. You see the soldiers rhythmically honing their steel by the light of the fires. This is the physics of the abrasive sharpening. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the earth as thousands of feet rhythmically shift in anticipation. This is the acoustic of the prekinetic shuffling. The boring necessity of the ladder calculus follows the Ottoman preparations. The Sultan's engineers rhythmically measure the height of the breaches to ensure the assault ladders rhythmically reach the parapets. This is the mechanical engineering of the vertical axis. You see the wood beams rhythmically lashed with heavy rope. This is the mathematics of the structural lashing. You feel the rhythmic cramp in the carpenter's hands as he drives the last nail. This is the acoustic of the muffled hammering. You understand that the assault is rhythmically built on mathematical certainty rather than chance. The acoustic of the whispered absolution is the final forensic signature of the night. On the walls, priests rhythmically move among the soldiers, offering final prayers. This is the acoustic of the spiritual closing. You realize that the human machine is rhythmically synchronizing its spirit with its metal. This is the biology of the ultimate resignation. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the cold steel against your palm. This is the mechanical reality of the final watch. The chemistry of the morning damp follows the conclusion of the night. As the first light rhythmically appears over the Bosporus, the fog rhythmically lifts to reveal the scale of the Ottoman mobilization. This is the mechanical unveiling of the destruction. You feel the rhythmic sting of the dew on your face. This is the biology of the environmental awakening. You understand that the great silence was a biological mechanical breath before the final exhalation. This is the physics of the kinetic release. By the end of this hour of silent exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of terminal pressure. You have seen the Sultan rhythmically wind the spring of the war machine to its breaking point. You realize that the imperial safety is now non-existent, dissolved by the fast rhythmic calm of the final night. You grip a cold stone crenellation, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the anticipation residue. And you understand that the imperial future is dependent on the fast, rhythmic violence of the coming dawn. The acoustic of the Sultan's signal gun from the west is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically shatters the silence, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically exploding into its last transformation. This is the acoustic of the night. You realize that you are not looking at a dawn. You are looking at the mechanical ignition of the final assault tonight. As the mechanical potential of the last 2 months finally converts into kinetic release, we stand at the epicenter of the collapse. To understand why your survival would be a matter of fluid dynamics and mass velocity, you must experience the physics of the Great Assault. At 1:30 a.m. on May 29th, Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically initiated the three-wave attack. The silence of the previous night is rhythmically shattered by the acoustic weight of 80,000 men moving in synchronized direction. You are standing on the inner wall of the Lycus Valley. The sensory transition is one of blinding flashes and the metallic scent of hot bronze and fresh blood. The first rhythm of the assault is the physics of the human attrition wave. Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically deployed his irregular troops, the Azaps, as a mechanical buffer. This is the mathematics of the kinetic drain. Their role is to rhythmically exhaust the Byzantine ammunition and human energy. You see the Azaps rhythmically charging the moat, carrying ladders and fascines. This is the physics of the scaling force. You hear the rhythmic scream of the assault hymns mixed with the crack of the hand cannons. This is the acoustic of the first impact. You realize that the Sultan is rhythmically spending biological capital to wear down the mechanical resistance of the walls. The second rhythm is the biology of the Janissary precision. Once the Azaps and the Anatolian troops have rhythmically weakened the defense, the Sultan rhythmically unleashes his elite Janissaries. This is the physics of the concentrated force. Unlike the previous waves, the Janissaries move with a mechanical discipline. You see the white caps of the Sultan's guard rhythmically advancing through the smoke. This is the mathematics of the tactical phalanx. You feel the rhythmic thud of their boots hitting the rubble. This is the acoustic of the professional execution. You understand that surviving the Janissary wave involves facing a human machine that rhythmically refuses to break. This is the biology of the elite metabolism. The mechanical reality of the Kirkaport failure follows the frontal assault. In the Blocherny sector, a small postern gate, the Kirkaporta, is rhythmically left unlocked or breached during the confusion of the rotation. This is the physics of the structural leak. You see a small group of Ottoman soldiers rhythmically entering the internal corridor between the walls. This is the mathematics of the infiltration. They rhythmically ascend to the battlements and raise the Ottoman standard. This is the visual signal of the systemic collapse. You hear the rhythmic cry of the city is taken, echoing from the north. This is the acoustic of the moral disintegration. You realize that the fortress machine has rhythmically failed due to a mechanical oversight. The visual rhythm of the defensive fracture occurs as the Genoese commander, Giovanni Giustiniani, is rhythmically wounded by a crossbow bolt or culverin shot. This is the physics of the command's severance. As he is rhythmically carried to the ships, the Genoese defense rhythmically disintegrates. This is the biology of the panic contagion. You see the defenders rhythmically abandoning the outer wall to squeeze through the narrow inner gates. This is the mathematics of the bottleneck fatalism. You feel the rhythmic crush of human bodies against the stone. This is the acoustic of the trampling. You understand that the wall has rhythmically transformed from a shield into a trap. The boring necessity of the Sultan's tactical observation follows the breach. From a raised platform, the Maltese Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically observes the collapse of the Byzantine line. This is the mechanical analysis of the victory. He rhythmically commands the final thrust of his reserve cavalry. This is the physics of the pursuit velocity. You see the Sultan rhythmically directing the flow of the soldiers toward the breach gates. This is the mathematics of the urban laceration. You feel the rhythmic jolt of the earth as the Ottoman cavalry rhythmically enters the city arteries. This is the acoustic of the final gallop. The acoustic of the great cry is the final forensic signature of the assault. As the Ottoman army rhythmically pours over the walls, the sound of the imperial resistance rhythmically fades. You see the Emperor Constantine XI rhythmically casting off his imperial regalia to charge into the breach as a common soldier. This is the biology of the sovereignty Shah. You realize that the emperor is rhythmically becoming one with the dust of his empire. This is the physics of the final collision. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the overwhelming mass. This is the mechanical reality of the conquest. The chemistry of the iron and blood follows the breakthrough. As the blade work rhythmically intensifies in the streets, the air is filled with the scent of oxidizing steel and intestinal gases. This is the mechanical sensation of the biological liquidation. You feel the rhythmic slickness of the limestone as it becomes coated in human fluid. This is the biology of the slaughters. You understand that the great assault is a biological mechanical grinding machine that rhythmically converts a living city into sovereign loot. This is the physics of the force transfer. By the end of this hour of assault exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of irreversible dissolution. You have seen the Theodosian Walls rhythmically cease to function as a barrier. You realize that the imperial safety is now non-existent, shattered by the fast, rhythmic momentum of the Sultan's will. You grip a cold bronze sword hilt, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the impact residue, and you understand that the imperial future has rhythmically collapsed into the fast, rhythmic presence of the new master. The acoustic of the Sultan's victory trumpet from the Lycus Valley is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically announces the end of the Roman era, you hear the sound of a world that is rhythmically resetting its gears for a new empire. This is the acoustic of the imperial end. You realize that you are not looking at a battle. You are looking at the mechanical rebirth of the Ottoman century tonight. As the mechanical resistance of the walls has been rhythmically neutralized, we move into the interior of the city. To understand why your survival would be a matter of asset liquidation, you must experience the physics of the urban inversion. Once the great assault succeeds, the city stops being a fortress and rhythmically becomes a warehouse under the laws of medieval warfare. Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically grants his troops 3 days of plunder. You are standing in the courtyard of the Hagia Sophia as the first waves of soldiers arrive. The sensory transition is one of shattering glass and the sharp scent of spilled wine and charred silk. The first rhythm of the sack is the physics of the wealth extraction. A city is a mechanical accumulation of historical value. You see the Ottoman soldiers rhythmically stripping the gold mosaics from the church walls and rhythmically prying jewels from reliquaries. This is the mathematics of the resourced displacement. Every object is rhythmically evaluated for its portability. If it is too heavy, it is rhythmically fragmented. This is the mechanical deconstruction of the art. You hear the rhythmic clink-clink of chisels hitting gilded plaster. This is the acoustic of the value stripping. You realize that the city is rhythmically being hollowed out like a biological carcass. The second rhythm is the biology of the human curbing. The citizens are rhythmically processed not as enemies but as commercial stock. You see groups of captives rhythmically bound with rope lengths. This is the mathematics of the slave logistics. The Sultan's officers rhythmically sort the population by age, health, and skill. This is the physics of the human categorization. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the crowd as families are rhythmically divided. This is the biology of the social dissolution. You understand that surviving the sack involves becoming a portable asset. In the Ottoman ledger, this is the acoustic of the muffled wailing. The mechanical reality of the Sultan's entry follows the initial chaos. Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically rides through the Charni Gate toward the Hagia Sophia. This is the physics of the symbolic possession. He rhythmically halts at the great door and rhythmically scatters earth over his turban as a gesture of humility. This is the chemistry of the political theater. However, he rhythmically commands the immediate conversion of the cathedral into a mosque. You see the imams rhythmically reciting the call to prayer from the pulpit. This is the acoustic of the cultural overwriting. You realize that the Sultan is rhythmically recoding the urban software of the city. The visual rhythm of the systemic arson occurs in the wealthy quarters. To rhythmically flush any remaining defenders, small fires are rhythmically set in the timber-framed houses. This is the physics of the thermal expulsion. You see the black smoke rhythmically rising over the golden horn. This is the chemistry of the incomplete combustion. You feel the rhythmic heat wave as the wind pushes the embers across the mesa. This is the biology of the urban conflagration. You understand that surviving the sack involves navigating through a rhythmic labyrinth of heat and ash. This is the acoustic of the roaring flame. The boring necessity of the spoils counting follows the 3-day window. The Sultan's defterders treasurers rhythmically establish collection points at the main gates. This is the mechanical auditing of the conquest. Every soldier must rhythmically relinquish the Sultan's fifth, the comes of his loot. This is the mathematics of the imperial taxation. You see the A6-sized vellum receipts rhythmically issued, 4 sacks of silver and herds of captives. This is the physics of the logistical stabilization. You understand that the sack is rhythmically transitioning from chaotic plunder to bureaucratic absorption. The acoustic of the broken bell is the final forensic signature of the urban inversion. The great bells of the Orthodox churches are rhythmically lowered and shattered to be rhythmically recast as Ottoman cannons or lamps. This is the chemistry of the metallurgic recycling. You hear the sound of the heavy bronze rhythmically hitting the pavement. This is the acoustic of the sonic erasure. You realize that the voice of the old city is rhythmically being melted down to power the new empire. This is the physics of the harmonic collapse. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the industrial transition. The chemistry of the incensed dust follows the cleaning of the Hagia Sophia. As the new masters rhythmically wash the marble floors with rosewater, the scent of the Byzantine liturgy is rhythmically replaced by the pungent aroma of fresh mortar. This is the mechanical deodorization of the conquest. You feel the rhythmic coolness of the whetstone beneath your boots. This is the biology of the environmental shift. You understand that the urban inversion is a biological mechanical reset of the imperial coordinates. By the end of this hour of sack exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of property dissolution. You have seen the Roman world rhythmically liquidated into Ottoman bullion. You realize that the imperial safety is now non-existent, replaced by the fast, rhythmic efficiency of the Sultan's slave markets. You grip a cold marble fragment, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the ruin residue, and you understand that the imperial future has rhythmically evaporated into the fast, rhythmic growth of Constantine. The acoustic of the iron key turning in the new lock is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically confirms the change of ownership, you hear the sound of a world that has rhythmically closed its last chapter. This is the acoustic of the institutional end. You realize that you are not looking at a ruin. You are looking at the mechanical foundation of the new caliphate tonight. As the air in your room reaches a state of thermal equilibrium, we witness the final stabilization of the city. To understand why your survival would now be a matter of systemic integration, you must experience the physics of the new hegemony. By June 1453, the kinetic friction of the assault has rhythmically dissipated. The city, once a closed fortification, is rhythmically reopened as the capital of the Ottoman Empire. You are standing on the ruins of the Golden Gate, watching the sun set over a landscape that has been rhythmically recoded. The sensory transition is one of iron quiet and the fresh scent of wet lime and sawdust. The first rhythm of the new hegemony is the physics of the structural stabilization. A conquered city is a mechanical liability until its walls are rhythmically repaired. You see Ottoman engineers rhythmically filling the breaches with new limestone and lead binding. This is the mathematics of the restoration. Unlike the emergency repairs of the siege, these are permanent fixes designed for millennial duration. You hear the rhythmic chink of the mason's hammer. This is the acoustic of the reconstruction. You realize that the walls are rhythmically transitioning from a desperate shield into a stable boundary. The second rhythm is the biology of the repopulation metabolism. To rhythmically revive the city organism, Sultan Mehmed II rhythmically issues the Srgn, a decree of forced resettlement. He rhythmically imports craftsmen, merchants, and farmers from across his empire. This is the physics of the demographic pressure. You see caravans rhythmically entering through the Adrian-Opal Gate, carrying tools and seed. This is the mathematics of the economochristert. You feel the rhythmic steadying of the city poles as the marketplaces rhythmically reopen. This is the biology of the urban recovery. You understand that surviving the new era involves merging into a multi-ethnic machine. The mechanical reality of the Sultan's new palace follows the stabilization. Mehmed II rhythmically commences the construction of the Sarai Atik Old Palace and later the Topkapi. This is the physics of the power centralization. You see the foundations rhythmically dug into the Byzantine ruins. This is the mathematics of the architectural replacement. You hear the rhythmic rasps of the stone saws. This is the acoustic of the new order. You realize that the Sultan is rhythmically anchoring his dynasty into the geological frame of the city. This is the chemistry of the mortar, the visual rhythm of the imperial uniformity occurs in the transformation of the skyline. The crosses are rhythmically replaced by crescents, and the first minarets rhythmically ascend beside the domes. This is the physics of the vertical signal. You see the white limestone of the new mosques rhythmically reflecting the Mediterranean light. This is the chemistry of the aesthetic shift. You feel the rhythmic shudder of the old statues as they are rhythmically toppled to be recast into practical tools. This is the mechanical recycling of the history. You understand that the visual language of the empire is rhythmically being updated. The boring necessity of the legal recalibration follows the reconstruction. The Sultan's Qadi's judges rhythmically establish the new legal grid based on the Sharia and Qanon. This is the mechanical auditing of the social conduct. You see the A6-sized vellum judgments rhythmically issued to regulate property ownership and trade taxes. This is the mathematics of the civic stability. You feel the rhythmic tremor in the old Byzantine citizen's hand as he signs his new contract as a dhimmi, protected subject. This is the acoustic of the pennon paper. You understand that the empire is rhythmically stabilizing through bureaucratic logic. The acoustic of the Ottoman silence is the final forensic signature of the new hegemony. It is not the silence of the void, but the silence of the order. The cannons are rhythmically parked in the arsenal. The war cries are rhythmically replaced by the rhythmic chant of the call to prayer 5 times a day. This is the acoustic of the systemic clock. You realize that the city has rhythmically found its new frequency. Your body vibrates with the rhythm of the imperial stasis. This is the mechanical reality of the long piece. The chemistry of the new mortar follows the completion of the repairs. As the fresh slate lime rhythmically hardens in the sun, it bonds the Ottoman stone to the Roman rubble. This is the mechanical fusion of the eras. You feel the rhythmic strength of the wall beneath your palm. This is the biology of the structural continuity. You understand that the new hegemony is a biological mechanical synthesis of conquest and preservation. This is the physics of the historical glue. By the end of this final hour of hegemony exposure, you are vibrating with a sense of final closure. You have seen the 1453 collision rhythmically resolve into a new sovereignty. You realize that the imperial safety is now rhythmically guaranteed by the fast rhythmic strength of the Ottoman Sultan. You grip a cold iron gate handle, your fingers twitching with the rhythm of the and you understand that the imperial future has rhythmically begun in the fast rhythmic silence of Istanbul. The acoustic of the final gate closing at nightfall is the final mechanical signal. As the sound rhythmically confirms the security of the new capital, you hear the sound of a world that has rhythmically finished its transformation. This is the acoustic of the forensic, and you realize that you are not looking at a fall. You are looking at the mechanical completion of the Roman metamorphosis.